Alright, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I managed to hit Infinite yesterday. Last night I unfortunately was up until like midnight, and I have a physical job. Had to wake up at like 6, so paid the price. I'm 30 now, I'm not 20, so I can't do that kind of stuff and get away with it scot-free anymore, but it was worth it. I went from rank 10 to Infinite, and I kind of just wanted to talk about just like some observations that I had. I got a lot better this season. Obviously, it was the first season I've ever played the entire season, playing the game, mainly because on my channel, if you just take a look at it, it's like 95% Magic Spellslingers, and they've just really been dropping the ball with content releasing for that game, and so that's why I switched to Marvel Snap this month. But I wanted to just talk about some things that really helped me hit Infinite. And so number one being your cube management. So everyone just talks about like it's Marvel Snap, it's the core mechanic of the game, how the game functions, how you ladder, and it really just determines you can mitigate bad snaps and bad choices with skill, but it just basically determines how quickly you climb the ladder, and you are time gated because a season is a month, right? So if you're not super good, and I'm not super good, I just got a lot better this season. I still have so much to learn about this game, but it was really interesting seeing the growth that I had in it. Very challenging because Marvel Snap is not like a typical card game. It doesn't have typical archetypes, and it's not really about like a win rate. It's much more about a cube rate, and that's more in your control. And so it does something unique where it like throws in variance, but gives you a way of dealing with it. Unlike a regular card game that has variance where you can just get mana screwed, or your opponent draws the nuts and you don't, or whatever. So it's almost like a battle against yourself a lot of the time when you play Marvel Snap, and you just have to put your ego to the side and retreat a lot. I mean, you have to retreat a ton in this game. And so if you're not retreating like half or more of your games, you are probably not playing Marvel Snap correctly, I would assume. So yeah, that's just the biggest thing, is putting your ego aside. And this kind of, the second tip leads like directly into this first one, and that is knowing the meta. So I used untapped.gg when I hit about, I want to say high Omega, low Galactic, I think. And I already had like a good idea what the meta was because I just played a lot this month. But knowing the meta does a lot of different things. The first thing it does is it lets you be able to calculate without having to spend a ton of time. And that's important because your turns are timed, and so if you only have a short while to maybe calculate 5 or 6 different lines, knowing what your opponent is playing is going to help immensely with that. And there were a lot of games where I was just sitting there, holding my head, and I ran out of time and lost a few games because I was just stuck in like this like think tank, like limbo. And paying attention to the meta really helps. Looking at popular deck lists helps. Even if you just look at popular content creators and seeing what they're doing, because I notice like they'll post a deck, I'll see that deck, it's not a coincidence. I'll see it in full force. Looking at like something on untapped.gg where you can see like the cube rates and the win rates, and other people are looking at that stuff too, and so you can assume that you're going to be running into these things. And then also it gives you more awareness as when you need to retreat and when you need to stay in, because you have a more understanding of what their threats are and what they don't have, and what you can play around. So knowledge in this game is super, super important. So like something like Magic, for example, if I'm playing Red Deck Wins, I don't necessarily need to know the meta inside and out to just beat people. That's a really basic example, but there's a lot of card games where you don't need to have this like intimate knowledge to be able to do well. It's just like, can your opponent deal with what I'm doing? Like if I'm playing like Lotus Field or something, I'm playing a combo deck in another card game, if I get my combo, I'm gonna win. Not saying that not knowing the meta inside out isn't always the best thing to do, but it's much more critical in Marvel Snap, to me, it seems. So knowing the meta and the cube rate is super important. When to snap, when to retreat. Those are the two biggest things. Next biggest thing is picking a deck that is competitive enough. Not saying you have to pick like the very best deck, but you have to pick something, you know, no worse than tier 2, and practice it, learn the lines, and learn how it plays against other things. And then eventually you might even have to tech it out. So for instance, like with this Shuri deck, when I hit Galactic, I was going against a lot of mirror matches, and so I put in the America Chavez because I noticed if in the mirror match, like if my opponent plays Shuri on 4 and I don't, I'm gonna lose the mirror match because I just can't compete with their stats. And so I ended up taking out the Zero and the Ebony Maw or Titania, and I put in the Arrow and the Chavez as more tech cards because I wanted another card to answer Galactus besides Cosmo with Arrow. And then Chavez let me see the Shuri, Taskmaster, and Red Skull much more consistently. Like, yes, it does deny me seeing Taskmaster on 6, but that was a way less of a hit than not seeing Shuri on 4. And so I was winning a lot more mirror matches after I did that. I got really disheartened last night because I was at 95.8. I dropped down to like 96 point something, and I was like, man, screw this. Like I spent, you know, this month trying to go from 10 to infinite, and I logged back in at like 9 p.m. and then I played from like 9 to like midnight and made it. And I could actually see myself improving during that one session last night, and that's how I know I have so much to improve on, because if I can improve in a matter of hours, then you know, my skill level just isn't that high. So even with something like a Shuri deck, I still had to go out of my way to make it work for me. And yesterday is when they had the double on reveal location, and so the Dr. Doom super helped with that, and also that also was a really big inhibitor in the mirror match, because if they had Shuri and I didn't, they doubled the double on their stats, and so that made it super important for me to draw Shuri, even more so. But yeah, I think those are the three things that I would say are the most important. And you know, and even if you don't have like the best decks, like if you're running to a bunch of Galactus, run Cosmos, run Arrow. If you're running into a bunch of Thanos, run Killmonger in your deck. You know, you can try and like main deck these outs, even if your deck isn't that great, which is why I think like different versions of Sarah Control are really strong, like, and probably will always be in like every format. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. I hope it helps somebody. Not sure anything I said is too complicated or something people haven't heard a million times, but those three things are just super true. And again, I just go to untap.gg or Marvel Snap Zone and just look at what's out there. And you got to put the reps in, obviously. I'm really glad that I only have to go from 70 to infinite this time and not 10 to infinite, because getting 900 cubes is much harder than 300, obviously. Even if the lower ranks are easier, it's way less time involved. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.